Hi there, good evening. You're watching Spotlight. I'm Gauri Dwivedi. Now, a shocking incident in Gurugram has once again reignited the debate on why is sex education such a big taboo in India. In fact, does India have a formal government-formulated sex education for school? Unfortunately, it does not. Because teaching kids about sex is against our culture, against our ethos, and we should in fact keep it under wraps. So much so that the few schools that teach about sex education actually talk more about hygiene. Worse still, it is the Indian parents who don't feel the need to actually teach their child about sex education. Here's the reason why parents should talk about sex education. A 12-year-old girl in Gurugram was raped by her own father for 5 years. And it was only when her teacher actually differentiated between good touch and bad touch that she really realized what sexual violation was actually happening with her. At Spotlight, we debate, is it time for India to drop the hypocrisy around sex education for the sake of our own kids? First, listen into some sound bites and then we take this discussion forward.
There is a friendly relationship between a teacher and the student can express their views, and the teacher can give some medicines to their views. Then only the sex education is highly necessary, what we feel nowadays in the modern society, because until and unless we impart sex education from middle school to the senior school level, there will be again the traditional concept, and there will be again the black image will be prevailing.
Children feel afraid. If I talk or tell somebody, nobody will believe them. Secondly, the person, the attacker or the exploiter also threatens them. So a small child may be scared. Many times children don't know what is happening to them. Only when they become older that they realize what is happening to their body and physically and mentally. And it is then they talk to their parents.
All right, let's take the story forward. In the studio, I've got Talish Ray, who's a partner with TRS Law Offices, project director of Girls Got to Know, also Sonal Ahuja, a senior educationalist and a teacher counselor, and Marora, who's a principal with JBM Global International School. Good evening, ladies. Welcome to Spotlight as we debate what is clearly an extremely horrific incident that has come to light. My first question, in fact, goes to the principal on the panel. Miss Arora, the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, this entire incident came to light only in the school when the girl was being given basic sex education, when the good touch versus bad touch discussion was happening. Only then did she realize the sexual violation that was happening to her for the last 5 years by her own father. How important it is to have sex education as a curriculum, as a part of curriculum?
It plays a very pivotal role, and no doubt we take the responsibility. We sensitize the children in the school and we tell them what is good and what is bad. We show them the movies. We tell them, yes, this all is, wherever you are touched, this is not good and this is bad for you. And we tell them that whom to talk to and whom. So these specifications we do give in the school, and so see, what is the fault of a 3-year-old child or 4-year-old child when she does not know it? Right from the beginning, right from 2+ or 3+, we tell them and we show them such movies, such videos in the school, and they are sensitized. Yes, this is not good for you, and this you have to avoid.
Absolutely. Okay, so as we take this discussion forward, our calling lines are open. The numbers are flashing at the bottom of your screen. Call us and tell us what you think about this situation. Is it time for India to have a sex education formal policy? You can also tweet with the hashtag SexEdSaves. Sonal Ahuja, my question to you is that India does not have a government-formulated sexual education program for schools. How shocking is that?
There are some acts. Yes, you're right. There no such policy for bringing this issue in the schools. But I believe all these private schools are now trying their best in raising cases of child abuse, be it sexual abuse or be it a mental abuse. It's happening. And in fact, if you talk about the adolescents, the substance abuse, It's on the rise.
Right.
So yes, schools have taken their steps forward towards it. They've put down their steps there. But yes, there are acts also. But the only thing is, what is missing is the awareness. POCSO is one such act which protects the children from abuse. So if we are kind of aware and we make the teachers and the schools and the parents aware about it, definitely things will take some shape and they will change. Also, you know, it's not about only the policies.
Yes.
Basically,
implementation. That's a challenge. That is a big challenge. Let me get Talish Ray on that note into the discussion. Ms. Ray, the fact of the matter, as we've been discussing, not only does India not have a proper government formulated sex education curriculum, it's worse. It's actually, you know, even if whatever little is there in terms of acts, it's not even implemented properly.
I think there are a couple of things that we need to keep in mind before we actually start on that. The first is the figures that come out. So the first figure that I had in front of me is that 19% of the world's young population is in India. That apart, 1 in every 2 child is actually sexually abused in some manner or the other. When we look at the shocking figures, then we start looking at things as to what brings it about and how those can be tackled. So the first point is about what brings it about is the fact that there is a society which refuses to acknowledge that this exists. The second is about policy and as well as its implementation. So when we're looking at in terms of the act, we do have an act against child sexual abuse. We may not have a policy about sex education, but if one is to look at the act itself talks about a framework mechanism by which awareness would be spread. And there are boards like the CBSE which have made it mandatory for schools to talk about it. But where the challenge to me actually lies is the fact that we refuse to address it as families. We refuse to talk about it. We refuse to look at our children and address their curiosity. We refuse to acknowledge that it is, even as you referred, a part of our culture. And every generation is left to think, as was said in a very famous movie, that they've invented it on their own. As a result of that, there are a whole bunch of children that fall into that gap. And I wouldn't even call it a gap, I'd call it a precipice of abuse. And we have to be looking at a manner in which first the families start to address it.
Absolutely. So yes, it all begins from the family. That is the first unit which actually binds us, and that is where it's a huge gap. I'll come back to you, Talish. Let's quickly take a couple of callers. We've got Purushottam who's joining us from Haryana. Go ahead, Purushottam, make your point.
Ma'am, thanks for giving me an opportunity to come over to your channel. I would like to say, ma'am, that this unfortunate incident which took place in Gurguram, Haryana, it is a matter of shame, acute shame. Ma'am, I would like to suggest that sex education is the need of the hour. And for the school-going children, it is a must. You see, the atmosphere is so spoiled that there is every danger from every corner to the delicate children. And for this purpose, we must have statutory provisions and a well-established policy, and which should be enforced in letter and spirit. Only then we can save our children from the...
Absolutely, for the sake of our kids. Yes, you've made your point, Purushottam. Absolutely, for the sake of the kids, there should be more structured policy, and of course, it needs to be followed. In fact, Sonal, take that point forward, because, you know, if we are even talking about, as, you know, Talish was saying, that families in India refuse to talk about it. Even if schools make a small little progress in that direction, the family unit is absolutely afraid of talking about it. And in fact, there are studies which point out that that a majority of Indian parents do not even talk about the word sex to their children. So it's actually, it says anywhere between 87 to 90%. So what are we even talking here?
You're right. You're absolutely right, because it's not only about the sex education. That's still a bigger issue. They don't even, they can't even name the body parts properly. A 2.5-year-old child is being addressed with pee-pee and poo-poo type talks, which I don't think so is very much important. In fact, we have the names of the body parts. Come on, you are into a 21st century. And when we see we are facing such problems already, and it's not that a parent has to go back or a teacher has to go back and talk. You have ample of beautiful cartoon films made, and Komal is one film which is in Hindi and English as well. If it is shown to the parents, I believe it should be shown to the parents first and then to the children. And in fact, if the parents are empowered, they know what to be done. I don't think so we have to pull the children into the rooms to show them such movies. A mother or a teacher can well, full of wisdom, you know, she can well empower the child about it. And why not we are open in talking to them? A child who comes to you and addresses, Mom, my uncle did this thing to me, and the mother says, no, 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 he's very close. Don't talk about it.
Absolutely, yeah. Brushing it under the carpet is another issue.
Absolutely,
Yes,
because
yes.
we're not ready to accept it.
Let's quickly get in Sandhya Raju, who's director of CCRA from Cochin, who's joining us on Skype also in this discussion. Sandhya Raju, you must have, of course, heard about that horrific case in Gurguram, where the girl, in fact, was being raped for 5 years by her own father, and because there is absolutely no sex education that is really being conducted in schools in India, that the girl did not even know that the touch was actually violating her as an individual. So sex education continues to be a huge vacuum in India.
Yes, I agree with you, because sex education is something which is so important. We've been hearing about cases where we've been hearing about cases where 10-year-old children are becoming pregnant, 12-year-old children are becoming pregnant, and even after 5 months or 6 months, they don't know that they are pregnant. And that's a horrific time, because at 26 week and all, pregnancy abortion is also not possible. And this is only if you have a proper sex education as to what is wrong and what is right. These children can actually take some steps, if there is some counselor or something, that something wrong has happened to them. The thing is, when we are talking about sex education, immediately the moral taboos come about, and the entire, all people's ears get closed, and they say as if we are spoiling the children. But the increasing amount of child sexual abuse cases which are coming, especially in Kerala, we report the maximum number of cases, and there is no sex education happening anywhere. So that is something which is extremely important.
Extremely important, yes, that is correct. Ms. Arora, comment on the fact that as we've been talking about the, as even Sandhya was raising, that you have 12-year-old girls which are actually getting pregnant. There were some horrific cases that have come where 10-year-old girls have actually given birth to kids, but which tells the story that sex education should actually start early. Not just the fact that it doesn't happen, even if it does happen, it happens too late as far as, in India is concerned. Anyways, by which time teenagers know probably more than their parents.
See, we need to sensitize the children right from age or 9 years. We start giving them and telling them what biological changes they are going to have, and what can really happen. See, in the case yesterday, I got to know about Tamil Nadu girl who really started having had some strain on her skirt and was abused by the teacher, and she committed suicide. What was it? The teacher would have taken some action, and it is a very, very sensitive issue that happened, and it is really, we have to sensitize our girls that what biological changes that they are going to have it, and they must face boldly these things. And this we all sensitize them at very young age. Say in class 4, we tell them, yes, this change is going to happen, and they have to be mentally prepared for it.
Talisray, comment on the fact that I will just talk about this particular study, that in 2014, the Union Health Minister Harshvardhan, in fact, he was not a health minister, he was another minister who had been a health minister, but he did make a comment where he said that sex education actually is not so important and it can be banned in schools. That's the mindset.
You know, the only thing that there are two things that I'd actually like to point out. One is when we seem to talk about sex education or sex abuse, we actually tend to take it only in the realm of those that identify with the gender of girls or women. That's incorrect as a terminology, because boys are just about as vulnerable. And sometimes we have seen cases where it is very, very difficult to address those issues. So just to put that in the first perspective. But beyond that, where sex education is concerned, well, here's the thing, and that's my logic behind it, all right? There are studies that have proved that by the age of 11 in today's day and age, children have access to porn. So teach your children before the porn industry gets to them. It's as simple as that. I don't care to much comment upon what somebody who may have been a public officer may have declared at any point in time.
It gets better. I'll tell you why I said that. In 2016, the center had asked a panel that was making recommendations for a new education policy to remove the word sex and sexual from the final government document because it could probably offend sensibilities. So if you do not include sex in sex education, what are you going to be teaching?
Well, you know, that's also the other thing. Looking at the fact that we are one of the largest growing populations in the world with 1.3 billion and counting, it wouldn't have come without the biological process unless we're looking at immaculate conception. So maybe we should just go back and ask whether that is how children are being produced here. But that does get to be alarming because we do not have enough early stage intervention programs. We do not believe in empowering our children with information. We believe at some point in time that
they'll figure out themselves.
Yes, and that's where the porn industry comes in. You have a child as early as 11 years old on an average, which means that there must be children much younger or older. Who would be accessing all the nonsense that's put forward by the pornographic industry, though it has been banned even otherwise. It is illegal. Pornography is illegal as we speak in India. But what are we doing about this? So we have a choice. We can actually let our children go into that realm or teach them ourselves. So those are the only two choices that we have. So we have to take a call inconsequential of what is being said.
Right.
Responsibility as a parent is exactly ours. We can't keep talking about state all the time. The state can't keep stepping into it. And this abdication of responsibility towards the state is also not something that I agree to. As parents, as those that have a fiduciary relationship to children at large, children are our children. They are our human capital coming forward.
Absolutely. Yes.
So when are we going to take that responsibility and say, this is my responsibility, that I'm going to go out there, not just my child, but the other children that I come in contact with, educationists that are there,
in fact, absolutely.
have to do that. So we can't always keep saying that this is terrible, this is horrible, that this hasn't happened. I mean, I heard somebody the other day saying it's now the Times that is making it happen. No, it isn't.
No, that is just losing the complete focus as far as this issue is concerned.
Correct. So
let's get in a voice from Sonal, a response from Sonal as well before I go to Sandhya Raju. Sonal, you heard the comments that I was making about that particular report. That also tells you the mindset as far as the government is concerned. Any government of the day. That is the mindset officially. That, you know, and see, unless and until there is some directive, there are public schools and there are private schools, there are government schools. All of them need some basic curriculum to flow in. And if you have a government which actually says, or a panel which says that, you know, let's remove the word sex or sexual from the report, then it tells you, why are we even doing this exercise?
Yeah, see, this is something I will call it stereotypical. I mean, if you're removing the word sex from the sexual teachings to the children is not the one solution. And I believe if the schools take a step forward and they kind of develop such a curriculum and propose to the government, and the schools who are in charge and who are at the level who can bring the policies in front of the government, because there are many such institutes working aggressively towards it. There are lots of associations working towards it. If we kind of start developing it ourselves and just not waiting for the government to approve it, propose it, start continuing in our schools and let the government notice it on itself. I think it's kind of very cliche to wait for the government to give us a go and then we do the things. Secondly, why not the system thinks innovatively? Get down to the nursing homes, get down to the hospitals, from the prenatal stages to the postpartum stages of a mother. Why not the intervention programs being given to them there? Because they're regular to the hospitals, they're going for their visit, they're going to the gynas, they're going to, I mean, for complete 9 months, they're taking every month visits.
Yes.
Why not such interventions?
Absolutely.
Why are we not thinking new things to bring into our system?
Absolutely. One has to think innovatively. Let's quickly get in Ajay from Chennai, who's also calling us on this broadcast. Ajay, go ahead, make your point.
Yeah, I'm a father of 8-year-old son. 18 kids. My son is studying in 8th standard.
Okay.
And he has to access internet for his study. So I do not know how to control the him from the other issues, like prevent from the other unwanted thing which he may get exposed to.
All right, that's a very, very genuine concern of a parent, that how does one stop the overexposure that our kids are also in fact subjected to. In fact, let's take that argument forward. One of the reasons that are given against actually having a sex education is the fact that it promotes vulgarization. Some of the other arguments that are given is that it's abrasive to the sensibilities of children. But look at the case here. This concerned parent is also now genuinely worried that what happens to the overexposure that his child may in fact be subjected to at a very, very young age. Sandhya Raju, respond to that.
We need to have a balance, definitely. But also have to take it. We also have to take in account of the fact that age-appropriate sex education is something which is essential, and but this that because there is likelihood of there's likelihood of the children being exposed to extreme vulgar kind of things, and we should avoid it. Let them avoid it. So what we do is have age-appropriate sex education in schools, and I believe Kerala has issued a statewide direction that you can have awareness programs on child sexual abuse as a curriculum. So that means this will kind of help children understand and help it easier for them to approach the counselors or at least responsible people to report if anything adverse is happening to them.
Okay, let's. Okay. Okay. I think that's a bad audio line that we have with Sandhya Raju, and I request my director to just fix that. Let's quickly get in closing comments on this particular issue. Let's start with you, Talish. The fact is, we've talked at length about how society needs to come in, how the role of the family is equally important, how the fact that the government has limited role. In your assessment, if we are to talk about changing lives of so many millions of kids, it has to start now.
Yes, absolutely. And not just start now, learn to listen into your children. What we do see as lawyers is that very fact is that the first responder, the person that the child goes to first, very often is a parent. And what we also see that is that the first responder turns around with disbelief because they are in shock, they don't know how to respond, and they turn around and brush it under the carpet. We've dealt with more than enough cases where the child may have tried to approach and it doesn't happen. So learn to listen into your children. The second is all children will get to know about sex. Decide whether you want the pornographic industry to do this or you're going to do this yourself with the aid of educators at school, inconsequential of whether the government does anything or not. These are your children. These are our children.
Absolutely.
These are our resources. So heed to that, because otherwise the only thing that sets us apart as a democracy is the fact that we are the world's largest growing democracy.
Yes,
our human
absolutely.
capital is the thing that is moving us forward economically. We don't want a bunch of people who actually turn into later on in terms of being either depressed or having all the other repercussions as people who have suffered.
Let's quickly get in Harish from Hyderabad, who's joining us on the broadcast. Harish, what is your point?
Yeah, very thank you to take this in the debate, because I think it should be must from the age of 7, because the situation going on is very worse. Since the age of the 7, that is very prevalent in the schools. That is not even. The children at that age, they didn't even know about pornography. They are exposed to mobile phones, and they are getting it.
All right, that's a classic dilemma that parents, society, school, everybody goes through, which is information or communication versus overexposure. Where is it that parents draw the line as far as mobile phones is concerned? That's a separate discussion altogether. We'll try and address that at a later point in time. But today, of course, was about this 12-year-old girl, which once again has reignited the debate around sex education. Why is sex a taboo in India? Why is it that families, parents and individuals and society refuses to address the fact that sex education is a must, it is needed, it's high time we shirk off our hypocrisy. Thanks so much for watching this edition of Spotlight.